next up we have Streamr. So we invite Shiv to the.
So hi everyone, I'm Shiv Malik. I'm the head of growth at Streamr, and I think Ryan Salkus is going to kill me if he's watching this talk. So apologies, because I'm taking liberties here and slightly changing the format because I wanted to take some time out to explain this kind of major new development we have in our ecosystem called data unions. If you're familiar with Streamr, you might know about our network, but you might not know what we've done with that, and it's pretty innovative. So in that sense, I won't be entirely sticking to the format, but I'm here for questions. But I will start with an overview just for those who are uninitiated. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Streamr Project. First of all, we're a team of 35. We're headquartered in Switzerland, but we're kind of like everyone else, distributed around the world. Our main dev shop is in Finland, actually. And at the start of the year, we had about 13 million USD in the bank. So we've got a runway of about 2.5 to 3 years left. And we cashed out as well, just to protect the integrity of the project. That was one of the things about kind of maintaining really low risk. We hit milestone 1 in October last year. We actually celebrated that in Osaka for DevCon. Sad times, can't do that again. But the next one is in South America, right? So that's going to be fun in Bogota. And we're on track to deliver M2 this year, this time next year, thereabouts. And if there's any delay, really, it's because we've added this major new work brand. We've tried to stay nimble and look for powerful use cases. And about 1.5 years ago, we announced what has sort of now turned into data unions. So that is soft launching in June. So we are in June. So like 2 weeks. Oh my God, that's come up hard. And the hard targeted launch of developer teams and enterprises in September. I'm going to sort of just jump really into all of that and try and explain in a sense what data unions are. So look, the personal data market is worth tens of billions, right? And actually, most of these things, people don't see day in, day out. They don't see data being exchanged. They know, and I'm talking about people here at this conference, they have a really good insight into, how powerful companies like, Fan Group are, Facebook, Apple, et al. But they might not know actually how personal data is sold. Not, many of the companies that we are household names don't actually necessarily sell personal data. They just monetize it through their own platforms. So do sell it, kind of not really household names, but it's worth tens of billions as a market. And buying people like advertisers, WPP, let's say, who want to know just more about customers generally. That's certainly a large market, but there's certainly other markets out there, such as big companies like, let's say, TripAdvisor, not actually using it for advertising, but necessarily they want to buy it so they can understand how customers view them. Right, that's a huge secondary market in a sense. But the whole thing is a real mess, right? I won't go into this too much, but it's facing huge legal changes. GDPR is just one of many, and the new Californian Protection Act is also a new element to that legislative landscape. It's facing huge ethical problems. And that ethical problems are actually, even if things are lawful, they're actually closing down businesses worth hundreds of millions. JumpShot was a business, again, not a household name, but worth tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And it had to be closed down because suddenly consumers found out about this and they had a big ethical problem with their own data being sold from essentially from Avast, which is antivirus software. So Avast was actually collecting vast amounts of personal data. And what's driving these kind of legal and ethical changes are, in fact, consumers, right? They're unhappy, right? Everyone wants privacy, yes, but they actually also want the chance to actually share their data and their information at the same time. And I've just written a big essay about all of this, and that kind of it's not a battle per se, but it's just like the ineffectiveness really of the privacy strategy when we live in a world where people know that they want to share, right? A lot of the apps that we depend on every day share data between people. And we've actually obviously seen that with the coronavirus, right? We've seen that people want to share their health information. Why not, right? Privacy allows you to say no, but it doesn't allow you to say yes. And that's why, in a sense, we have believed for a while that the ownership model of data is actually the way forward on this. It gives you control, privacy, and remuneration, right? So it puts a price on data, which allows actually, and personal data more importantly, from the perspective of both the buyer and the people generating that data, which is the ordinary consumer, ordinary user of digital platforms like you and me. And once you put a price on it, in a sense, it takes the problems out of the hands of regulators and ethicists and campaigners and monopolistic companies like Apple who say, we'll protect your privacy, and it puts it in the hands of a market, right? And that's a pretty useful way, and a few other players, right? And the buyer and the seller, and they can sort of help govern that relationship, given that the volumes of data is actually a much better position, I think, than the one that we're in now. And I'll drop a reference in at the end of this to this longish essay that I wrote, which I think sets out what I've just said in a in a much longer way. But there is a problem with all of this, and it's been a technical one, right? Which is, how do individuals sell their data? And I want to tell this very quick story, which is what happened in the year 2000. I really like this story. It's there's a guy called Chris Downs, and he was the first person, if you want, to sell their data online. And obviously, being in the year 2000, there wasn't much to sort of go around. He was surprised actually by how much there was, but he kind of had to download it because actually you had to handwrite a ton of it as well. Anyway, he collected all these pages of information, running to about 800 in all, and put it up on eBay to be sold. And he was reflecting on that, and I think he got about $350 in today's time. So, you know, it's not bad. But it was a kind of one-off stunt, and he thought, you know, looking back in 2017, 3 years ago, it's like astounded that the infrastructure for individuals to be able to do this just hadn't changed in any way, right? And I think you and I also know that that really hasn't changed, and the reason for that is because it is a technical problem. So what are the issues that Chris Downs faced that we're still facing now? Well, one is transport, right? You have to move the data from one place to another. And Chris Downs, I think he printed it out and he used the postal service, right? That was his transport mechanism for data. Very inefficient, very unscalable for this kind of thing, especially in the world of real-time data. It's certainly not real-time. So you need something to deal with that. The second thing is you need discovery, right? So he used eBay as his kind of marketplace. But again, you know, it's not just that you want, you know, don't want buyers aren't going to come to a Chris Downs and then another Chris Downs and then me and then you and, you know, all individually and try and aggregate on price and figure all these things out. You need these things to come together into one, bundled into one product if you want. And then obviously something that's discoverable on a marketplace. And the last bit is the payment. And, you know, we all know here about payments, and what you actually need is micropayments, right? Even on a lower level than Ethereum is currently able to deliver. You know, if you're spending, you know, $3 million or whatever as a buyer for a subscription to a real-time data set, and there's 3 million members, then you're going to have to be paying them $1 each, and that's pretty difficult, or even even smaller amounts. So we solved it. Fingers crossed. If you think we did. We've got these three elements that we were kind of building out anyway, in many senses. And as I said right at the beginning of the talk, for those who know Streamr, they know that what our initial build product and our vision, our white paper is based on building this kind of peer-to-peer decentralized network for real-time data. If you're familiar with either Ocean or IOTA, that's the field that we're playing, and we're still very much building this network, obviously. The other thing that we built on top of it was a data marketplace, and for those who were here for the Ocean talk a couple of hours ago, visions are sort of somewhat similar. And the last bit was this thing that we built called Monoplasma about a year ago, which was for the micropayments issue. So it's a side chain and you can read more about the technical aspects of that if you want. But it's a side chain that essentially broadcasts money from one to many. So we brought all that together in what we're calling the data unions framework, right? That sort of solves your Chris Downs' problem. The network solves the transport issue, the marketplace solves the marketplace and the discovery issues. With that, we managed to aggregate many streams into one product. And Monoplasma obviously solves your payments issues. And the data union framework basically means that it allows people to easily bundle and sell their real-time data and earn revenue from that, which is a huge leap forward for the notion that individuals can essentially own their own data. Okay, so here's a sort of back-end overview. As you can see, we're talking about the data here that goes through from a data provider, so let's say you and me, using an application interfacing with that. That application sends it through the Streamr network, and it ends up on the marketplace as a product which people can unlock if they're buyers. And that means that the application, those who actually, in a sense, build the application aren't custodians of that data. And that's actually quite important, as you'll see in a bit. Then when it comes to the payments, that runs through another decentralized network, right? Through the Ethereum-backed smart contracts. And that means that, in a sense, quite neatly, the data and the payments are running through these two separate, very separate decentralized networks. And also, again, it's non-custodial for those who are building applications like this. They don't have control over how the money is distributed. It's very much a peer-to-peer relationship between the data providers and the data buyers. Okay, and then obviously we've allowed people to take an administration fee for building those applications, which is obviously very important, because otherwise what would be the motivation for building applications that, in a sense, allow you and those users to permission data and send it to a buyer. And you get this nice cooperative relationship here, which is what I really also like, between the administrators of a data product, a data union product, the data providers, they're on the same side, and the data buyers who come along and obviously fulfill that complete that circle, if you want, and a very necessary part. So, okay. Yeah, so in terms of, we've been working with both enterprises and startups, right, to get this framework off the ground. And I've got a couple of minutes left before we should go to questions, I guess, so I'll try and be quick. But we set ourselves a challenge, right? Could we already get kind of, existing platform or enterprise with over kind of 1 million users to revenue share with their users using a data union? And we're in late stage negotiations now at the moment with the mobile network operators, right? Mobile laptops and cars are the big hubs for data generation for the foreseeable future, for probably about 15, 20 years. So that's why we're working with mobile network operators, really, because it's a vertical that's kind of ripe for a differentiator. There's a lot of competition, and actually the cost of subscriptions are kind of very low in some senses, and they're not in the hundreds of dollars, right, per month. But the data is very valuable. So actually, if individuals are even making $3 a month off of this, which they could well do, then that's really significant for that vertical. And interestingly, also our research, other people's research also shows that kind of, unlike, say, financial data, people are very willing to share the sorts of data that come from a mobile phone. One end is browser information, and the other end is obviously people use browsers on their phone, and the other end is kind of location data. People price that quite cheaply in their minds, which is really fascinating. They probably shouldn't. So on the startup side, we've already got one startup called Swash. They're a team who are originally based in Turkey, and actually now they've got an office in Finland as well. And they're a browser plugin. What they've done is actually really pretty revolutionary. They said, okay, well, look, we'll create this plugin, and you can play around it with yourself and actually download it, and you can see what it means to be, in a sense, part of a data union. It's got about 1,600 members, so it's effectively a dApp built on top of our framework, and that makes it actually a pretty big dApp in the scheme of things. I mean, maybe not in the scheme of Web 2, but certainly for Web 3, this is a fairly biggish deal, and they're about to go launch properly in a few months' time, and people are earning data coin with the app already, and data being our token, Streamr's token. So they're using that because they've obviously focused on selling the data, right, and creating and galvanizing a community and getting enough of a panel size, if you want, or a membership of their union, so they could actually be viable. We've got some good numbers on that, so they think they need to get to about 50,000 members in their territory to start selling data worth, hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars, whatever currency. And that's really, really exciting because actually that's very possible. And that's what their first milestone will be. Look, I think that probably wraps it up. That's the back end for Swash. So, you can see Swash then becomes that admin, and that's their business model. They take 30% of the data sales, or up to 30%, but that's limited by the smart contract. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I guess first question I want to ask, because you briefly touched on it in your presentation, how do you think about your relationship with Ocean, and I guess maybe just more broadly, how you see how Streamr fits into the marketplace, right? So if you think about other protocols that involve data marketplaces, kind of what makes Streamr different?
Well, look, data marketplaces are really, I think there's a lot of room for a lot of people to create data marketplaces, but I also think they're a really hard business to get into. Amazon is now retrying their hand at all of this. And so that makes it very invidious position, I think, for smaller startups like Streamr and others. So what we really focused on is, look, can we bring a product to market that no one else can get their hands on? Right? Because then your marketplace is not about whether you've got lots of things there, but it's about whether you've got unique things there that people can't buy anywhere else, and that becomes your USP. So that's a strategy we've gone for. We've built, a framework that allows people to bring products to market, i.e. personal data. That's a huge market, where people have the incentive to, in a sense, join these unions because they want to also cash in on their own, the worth of their own data. And I think that's what sets us apart. Interestingly, Ocean have said that they also want to build data unions, and they're using our terminology. I think they said that in November. I don't know what that is on their roadmap, but that's a good sign, because it's a really fascinating idea, and it's a really powerful idea, and it'll sit well with people, I think, and it has sit well when we've researched this.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a reason why there's so many people going after this use case. So what are some of the things that you're most excited about on your roadmap that you can share?
Some of the other things, well, I mean, look, so we've got the launch of data unions coming up, so we're massively focused on that. And again, as I said, if you read the white paper, it's not on there. And I think, the world of kind of entrepreneurs maybe splits on whether you should stick to original visions or stay nimble, and actually look for where you're seeing demand and feedback. And we're getting a lot of feedback on data unions, a lot of uptake, all the way from one end of the spectrum with campaigners and activists going, oh my God, this is exactly what we're looking for. And, some of the people here might know about James Felton Keith. He's a kind of big activist on that scene, and Andrew Yang, he works quite closely with him. So this is something he's excited about, for example, and Glenn Weil. And then on the other end of the scale, we're seeing these sort of small startups, like, just bunches of developers going, right, we can build a business out of this. And putting their money where their mouth is and kicking it off, which is exciting. So that's why we've gone for this. So that's the main thing on the roadmap. And the other thing is obviously building out that network and making sure that it is fully decentralized. At the moment, it's one node, we're running it, and that's not good enough. But building out these messaging networks is very difficult, especially if you're going to then add crypto economics into the mix. We're working with block science on that. So that's where we are.
Gotcha. And cool. So then I guess maybe I might have missed this part, but I guess currently Streamr is an ERC20 token. When is this kind of like migrate, or is there a migration that will eventually take place to a separate blockchain, or did I misunderstand that? No.
That's maybe that's one of the big differentiators between us and IOTA. We didn't build in our token. We've kept it very separate. Like you saw in that diagram, we very much kept the token separate and the payments separate from the data, because what you want is low latency, right? So you don't want to confuse that with then adding in a token that's going to inevitably add some kind of transaction latency. So, or a DAG, and you have to do it that way. And I think let's not go into that and see how efficacious that's been for IOTA. But, we've very much kept them separate, and we like it that way.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're coming up on the time here. Where can everyone learn more about Streamr? I guess besides Messari.
Yeah, Messari. We love Messari. And I put the links up there. Streamr.network. That's our website. And then actually, there's a nice Medium tab with just dedicated to data unions. So you can find a lot of stuff on there as well. And that's in the chat.
All right. Thanks, Shiv.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good one.